think it's the first time we've had him on the show, and I was on their show from Boise a couple of weeks ago. Uh, Long time observer of sports in Texas, especially in Central Texas, but in particular college sports, high school sports too, and the Dallas Cowboys. I know he's long been a someone that has been an observer and covered the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. David Smoak joins us and goes by Smokey, and I hear him all the time with the guys in the morning and the afternoon on Big 12. Had that been one of the great new Sirius XM adding that Big 12 channel? I listen to that all the time.
Yeah, they do a great job. They do. Ari and it's a constant flow. I mean, there's been several different people that are a part of it. Dave Archer. It's great to be a part of it. And I'll tell you what, just like you or me or anyone else that has anything attached to the Big 12, there's always something going on. But the last 2.5 months has been like we've kind of nuked it up a level or two.
Before we talked about this when I was on with you guys from Boise, Idaho, before the Boise State game. Before we get into the showdown, unbeaten showdown this Saturday at Boone Pickens Stadium, talk a little bit about that. I mean, I know this for a long time. I think a lot of Oklahoma State fans were hoping that OSU would catch somewhere with one of the other Power Five at the same time. Knew that the Big 12 was looking to try and keep in existence and try and add teams that would make it a viable venture going forward. I think they've done that, and even since we've talked to you in Boise, I think even fans here at Oklahoma State have said, yeah, especially when you look around and see what Cincinnati, BYU, and Central Florida have been doing on the gridiron. Yeah, this might work.
Yeah, I tell you what, it was almost like it's not the greatest analogy, but when all the news came down about Texas and Oklahoma and the SEC, I bet if you polled everybody, whether it was fan bases around the country or even media, I would think 75% pretty much thought the Big 12 was on life support, and probably in some ways they were. It was a stunning move. It was, of course, it's been documented in every angle possible, but you got to give. I know that Bob Bowlesby can be a lightning rod, a polarizing figure, because you're like, how in the heck did you not know? But they didn't. They found a way. The Big 12 is kind of like a cat with 9 lives. It seems like that they're always kind of on in that, oh my God, what's going on? They've had people get raided and poached or whatever the words are, and they find a way. And I think with what they had available, with really was the only. I mean, it was always an argument for one in or one out, but I think of the 4 they've added, it's hard to argue with them, and I think that they're still going to add maybe 2 to 4 more before it's said and done. But I do think, Robert, I think that they have come out of this about as well as possible, and I still think there's a chance because we don't know what's going to happen with the Pac-12 and whatever else. I wouldn't give up on them having somebody that used to be a part of the Big 12. I'm not reporting that. I'm not saying that. I just think that there's still that possibility on what happens with the Pac-12. And for a while, it looked like the Pac-12 had moved ahead of the Big 12 because of Texas and Oklahoma leaving. And I don't know. I think that the Big 12 has kind of saved itself, and now we move forward and see what happens. But, it's weird. Baylor plays Brigham Young in 3 weeks. I mean, why this year they have them on the schedule? They're going to play them kind of in a welcome to the Big 12. I mean, that's just ironic that it's this year, and this is the year Brigham Young's coming to the conference.
Nah, I think it's really interesting, and you mentioned that because I still think that's interesting. I think Nebraska still. I know their fans would come back to the Big 12, especially if Texas is out. Nebraska would come back to the Big 12 in a New York minute. The fans would. The administration loves the money of the Big 10.
Yeah.
And at Missouri thought they were going to get rich in the SEC, and they are making more money than they've ever made. But somebody forgot to tell the administration of Missouri you have to spend it to compete in the league. And that has blown their mind how much they've had to spend to try and keep up with the Joneses in the SEC.
Yeah, it's a nuclear arms race. I mean, I'll give you an example. I arrived in Waco 2010. Baylor had been through, 17 years in a row without a bowl game. We know how bad they were. And then they make this run. They start making this. They climb the ladder. RG3, of course, became kind of like the unicorn. But their budget, I think, when I arrived, was somewhere in the neighborhood of I don't know, maybe 20 million, 18, 20 million a year. And within a couple of 2-3 years, and of course, it was a stadium that is separate from that. Their athletic budget went close to like 80 million. And it's probably higher than that now. Maybe it's, I don't know, 90 or 100. And Oklahoma State's had to deal with that. And it's an arms race, and that's why the television revenue and the things that are everyone's looking for now. The rich get richer, but I do think that the 50 million or whatever it is a year in the Big Ten calms Nebraska's administration or calms everybody else. The administration goes, hey, we got to pay some bills too, but I still think it's weird from like even before Texas and Oklahoma decided to bolt, which now we know was several weeks ago, even before it was announced, that I always thought that no one's told me this. I've kind of gotten a little bit of due diligence on this, but if the Pac-12 was to have any kind of tremors, and that new commissioner is doing a pretty good job of stabilizing them too, I always thought that the Arizona schools, Colorado and Utah, or in that neighborhood, would still be of interest. I'm not saying that they're reaching out to the Big 12, but I do think that they're paying attention to what's going on. I really do.
No, I can see that. Hey, let's talk a little bit about this Saturday's game. Unbeaten's, both teams now in the AP rankings as well as the coaches poll. And you know what? Baylor is an interesting team in that first-time starting quarterback, although he's a veteran, been around. 10 starters returning on defense, and I'm as enamored with the 11th that didn't return. The big kid from LSU he's a bulldog in there in the middle. And then new offensive coordinator. Sometimes things aren't supposed to come together as quick as they have, but they seem to for Baylor this season.
John McClain, who's a Hall of Fame writer for the Houston Chronicle, told me this a long time ago, and I always remembered it. A head coach's best staff is never really the first, because a lot of times you hire people who you're familiar with, and in some cases you hire your buddies. But Dave Aranda was smart enough to realize, not that Larry Fedora wasn't a buddy, but he put together a staff, and the offensive staff last year pretty much across the board. Some were in the wrong spots, and some were, it did not work. I mean, the offense, that. Oklahoma State ended their year. They finally put them to sleep with that rout at McLean Stadium. But he was emphatically made the decision to go with the new offensive coordinator. Jeff Grimes had a great year at Brigham Young. He's moved up the ladder. They got the offensive line coach. The way they played against Iowa State, even when the offense started to get kind of, I don't know if it was conservative or Iowa State deserves credit because they're pretty good and they started to ramp it up. But there was never a game last year at any moment where we saw the first 2 or 3, 4 drives against Iowa State last year at all. There was one game against Kansas State, and of course Kansas, where Charlie Brewer did his thing, which he didn't get to do enough last year. But no, this offense has given them a chance, and they also have the threat to go over the top. Now, whether or not they have time to do that, can they run against established teams? They ran the ball well enough against Iowa State to give them a chance. But you're right, the defense, they actually gave up over 400 yards. Apu's just now kind of getting in the playing shape. He made a big play on a tip pass that was intercepted. But I do think, this program is kind of resilient. The second year under Matt Rule, they went from 1-11 to 7-6. And that's what I kind of thought would be the standard this year. Just get back to a bowl game. And that might still be it before it's said and done, but everyone would be disappointed if that happened. I do think that this team looks as if, because of who they just beat, and now, of course, the test on the road in Stillwater, I mean, who knows? The good news is whoever wins this game, all of a sudden, hey, we're 2-0. I loved Oklahoma State beating Kansas State, not because I cared who won the game. It's just I thought that, they needed kind of a, hey, we're okay, kind of a moment, and they obviously had that against the Wildcats.
Yeah, and Oklahoma State's deal is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I told you guys, I said, hey, this is a 50-50 game at Boise because OSU was up there without a lot of guys that Mike Gundy wanted to carry on the plane. They just weren't available. Now those guys are gradually matriculating back in, and we saw some last week. We'll see a few more, I think, get healthy this week. and that's been a big difference because when you got nothing but freshmen and walk-on wide receivers, it changes things for everybody out there.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. And you know, I remember the story. What was it against Boise State? The former I know I'm going blank on you. The son or grandson of a former coach at Oklahoma
Billy
State. And
Tubbs,
yeah,
former
I
OU
mean,
coach Billy Tubbs,
yeah,
yeah, his
yeah.
grandson. It was awesome.
It was incredible. I mean, and see, I love those kind of stories. And with college football getting so involved in college playoff and money and all that, that's still why I love. That's why I love college football. Those are the stories I love. Is something like that where a young man can have that moment. And my God, Oklahoma State needed every yard they got, you know. And so, you know, what's going to be interesting here is if Baylor, if they win, and we know they used to have a nightmare. I mean, they took some really good teams into Stillwater at T. Boone Pickens Stadium, but oh my God, if they could open up with wins against Iowa State and Oklahoma State, two teams that I thought were in that upper third of the conference when it started, and I'm not saying they win Saturday, but then all of a sudden you got to look up and go, man, it's pretty good, you know, and so that's why it's such an important game for Baylor, and obviously Oklahoma State wants to hold court, and I look forward to it. It's a 6 o'clock game. It's going to be a national television audience. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I think it'll be interesting, I really think the biggest thing for Oklahoma State this week is to shore up their special teams. They have not been good in that area, and if you're not good against Baylor in the special teams,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what Iowa State found out last Saturday, special teams can win football games, and they definitely won that football game for Baylor on Saturday.
Robert, I've always thought this. If you're a really, really good team and you also have dynamic or just really solid special teams, you can win a national title or you're going to play in a big bowl. If you're an average team but you have really good special teams, then I think you're going to win an extra game or two. And if you don't have it, then you're going to lose a game or two. And Baylor last year, everything was a mess last year across the board. Treston Ebner is as dynamic a return man as there is in the conference. And K-State's got one, and UT's got one, and I'm sure everyone's got one. But what really was something that was amazing is they got a kid from Arkansas who just comes walking on the football program, Hankins, and he's given them a little bit of a threat in the kicking game. It used to be are they going to make a 33-yarder to win the game? Are they going to be able to even kick a 42-yarder long enough? This kid's come in left footer and just drills it. They kick the ball in the end zone on kickoffs, so that means you're eliminating the returns, and they're really good on coverage as well. At least they have been so far. But last week, their punter Isaac Power averaged 54 yards a punt, four punts, and I mean flipped the script many times. And yeah, if Oklahoma State has any kind of wobble there, if in fact what we saw against Iowa State with Baylor, that could be the difference in this game. Either way.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I know, folks. Hey, here's how big Smoak is. He's got RG3 later. I've called producers. I've done the begging thing, and he's got him at noon today to record an interview. So tell RG3 we're sorry we missed him, but we'll see him on Saturday night, and I'm sure we'll see you here as well. In Stillwater at Boone Pickens Stadium. I appreciate the time.
No, the RG3 thing. We've had him many times, not dropping names. My God,
I know,
and I've stayed up with him. But this thing here, I was told no. You and I we traded some texts back and forth. Like the mothership said nope, and then all of a sudden, late last night, or I guess it was yesterday afternoon. Hey, yeah, we got this little window here. And I don't know if it's going to be with me and 400 other people. I don't think so. I think it's going to be what I was told, a small group, which I don't know what that means either. But if I can, I will get whatever I can to you, whatever they talk about or whatever he talks about Oklahoma State. I'll try to get that to you for you to use tomorrow.
Hey, that's cool. I appreciate it. And again, and again, I know you covered him through his Heisman campaign. What do you think, real quickly, what do you think of the start of his broadcast career? I've caught a couple of games he's done. I love his personality, but I think he's still kind of discovering, what kind of analyst he wants to be. He's still trying to figure out where his niche is. But again, his personality comes through.
Yeah, he's always had that. You know, he was. I mean, I think after, during the Heisman year and right after that, then he goes to Washington and has that amazing rookie year. You know, there was a lot of this. This guy could run for some sort of office, but he's got the personality. He's got a beautiful smile, and but you're right. It's you've done it. I've done it, and of course, then on the national level, where you can be picked apart a little bit, I do think he's trying to find himself. No different than when you start to take snaps at quarterback
Sure.
or whatever you do. I do think, and my only thing I told him is be yourself. Don't try to be this guy. Don't try to be that guy. Be yourself. Be who you are. And he's talented enough, and he has enough knowledge, plenty of knowledge in the game at all the levels to be able to kind of. And this is a big step for him because this is a national game. Yeah, he's a Baylor alum. We all know that. He probably realizes, oh my God, you know, you have all sorts of former alums doing games everywhere, and you just can't let that get in the way. But I do think that they've kind of let him slow steps. I think that's kind of why they've also separated him from doing too much media. Is he's learning his way, learning the ropes, and I do think that he just blew onto the scene. I mean, it was like he's looking to play another year. He told us on a show earlier this year, I want to play another year. Next thing you know, there's a report, ESPN and Fox are fighting over him. So they see the talent, they see the ability for him to grow into this role, and I think he's going to end up being a star.
Well, again, too, and here's a warning to him. I've seen a lot of alums come back and do games, and they try and
Yes.
overcompensate, and they end
Yep.
up making their own fans mad at them because they talk too much about the other team. So we'll
Yeah.
see. In fact, Brandon Whedon, Brandon's doing games now, and he's a good friend of mine, and I've told him to say, hey, just play like you're in the den with your buddies watching the game, and
Mm-hmm.
talk like you'd be talking to your buddies. I mean, clean it up a little, but that's the way you want to go. So
Yeah.
anyway, hey, we'll see you Saturday, and if you send anything our way, I appreciate it.
You got it, Robert. Thank you. We'll talk to you on our show,
All
I
right,
think, tomorrow. Thanks for your time. All
tomorrow
right.
afternoon. Appreciate it. There's David Smoky from down in Central Texas, Sikkim Radio, which is part of the same network.